Imagine this. You stand at the edge of an open grave, but the coffin isn't empty. Inside lies a body, not of a person, but of a version of you. The face is familiar, yet foreign. The clothes are ones you used to wear. The hands are frozen in gestures you once made without thinking. The mourners around you are strangers, but their tears are real. One of them turns and says, "You were so much easier to love when you were alive." And then you realize, this is your funeral. But the dead thing in the box is your old identity. The paradox of death without dying. Here's what no one tells you about transformation. To become who you are, you must first bury who you were. Not in metaphor, in blood and bone. The person you've been, the people pleaser, the achiever, the victim, the hero of your own tired story. That persona doesn't fade away. It fights. It claws at the coffin lid. It whispers from the grave, "Without me, who will you even be?" And so we linger in the in-between, haunted by ghosts of selves we've outgrown but can't release, the wake of unanswered questions. Why does growth feel like grief? Why do we cling to identities that suffocate us? What happens to the love we earned when we were someone else? The terror isn't in the death of the old self. It's in the silence that follows, the blank space where your name used to be. The illusion of continuity. We like to believe we're a single self moving through time like a thread through fabric. But Nietzsche shattered that lie. You are a crowd. The you that cried at 16 over a broken heart? Dead. The you that landed your dream job at 25? Dead. The you that swore, "I'll never be like my parents," dying as we speak, yet we hold funerals for strangers while refusing to bury our own corpses. The weight of the unburied you. Feel it already. The drag of ghosts in your joints. The laugh you force because she was always cheerful. The hobbies you pretend to love because he was the artistic one. The rage you swallow because they were so easygoing. These aren't habits. They're hauntings. A question slices through the cemetery silence. What if mourning isn't passive, but an act of war? Not against who you were, but against the lie that you must carry them forever. The priest clears his throat. The mourners hold their breath, and the you that stands graveside, the you that's been waiting in the wings while old selves took center stage, finally steps forward. The shovel is in your hands. The dirt is cold, and the first thud of earth. Hitting the coffin sounds like freedom. The grave is dug, but the burial is incomplete. Something stops you from throwing that final handful of dirt. Your fingers tighten around the shovel, not in determination, but in hesitation. Why is it so hard to let dead selves stay dead? The psychological graveyard, Carl Jung, called this the shadow work we refuse to do, the psychological equivalent of leaving corpses in our living rooms because we're too afraid to touch them. Every abandoned version of yourself lingers in your psyche like an unquiet ghost, whispering through nostalgia's deception. Remember how safe it felt to be small. Trauma's grip. This pain is who you are. Let it define you. Society's bribes. We liked you better when you were harmless. These aren't memories. They're competing consciousnesses, each fighting to keep their territory in your mind. The existential bait and switch Jean-Paul Sartre exposed the trap. We are condemned to be free. Freedom demands responsibility, and responsibility terrifies. So we bargain with our own evolution. I'll change after one more year in this relationship. I'll reinvent myself when things settle down. I'll speak my truth when they're ready to hear it. These aren't plans. They're postponed. Funerals. The neurological lock in your brain is wired for familiar suffering over unfamiliar peace. Neural pathways carved by repetition. Mistake identity for safety. The dopamine hits of old coping mechanisms. The cortisol addiction to crisis. The muscle memory of performed personalities. Like a prisoner who misses their cell, you've Stockholm syndromed. yourself into mourning your own captivity. The cultural hypnosis, modernity sells self-improvement, but punishes self-annihilation. Capitalism needs you identifiable to market, to social media rewards, consistent personal branding. Families assign roles. Like life sentences, even spirituality gets perverted. Find yourself, they cheer, while meaning stay findable. The fork in the cemetery, two paths now. Keep the corpse. Preserve the fiction of a continuous self at cost of chronic exhaustion from maintaining masks, relationships, built with who you were, a life measured in shoulds rather than is. Bury it fully. Endure the terror of existential freefall grief, of lost social capital agony of rebuilding from ground zero. The shovel trembles in your hands. The mourners hold their breath, and the wind carries the last whisper of your dying self. You'll regret this. The coffin is in the ground, but the burial is incomplete. You linger at the graveside, staring at the fresh mound of earth, half expecting it to tremble, for some part of your old self to claw its way back to the surface. It doesn't, but something worse happens. Nothing does. The world doesn't end. No lightning strikes. The mourners leave. And you're left standing there, untethered, realizing the first lie of transformation. You thought rebirth would feel like revolution, fireworks and fanfare, some grand cosmic welcome into your new life. But the truth is far more unsettling. No. One notices when you stop being who you were. The people who loved your old self keep talking to it. The systems that rewarded your old identity keep expecting it. The world moves on, indifferent to your internal funeral, because it never needed you. It needed the role you played, the haunting of half-death. This is the purgatory of unfinished metamorphosis, your phone. Still rings with calls for the person who no longer exists, your resume. Still lists achievements that feel like stolen valor, your eye. Bed still fits the shape of a body you've outgrown, like a ghost trying to interact with the living. You move through a world built for someone else's hands. The bureaucracy of the self, consider the paper trail of dead identities. Legal documents bearing the name of a stranger. Photo. Albums full of costumes you can't remember choosing. Love letters. Addressed to your emotional doppelganger, each one a tiny anchor, tethering you to shipwrecks of past selves. The betrayal of familiar places. Walk into any room you've inhabited as your old self, and watch what happens. Your childhood bedroom expects your teenage angst. Your office chair remembers your performative hustle. Your favorite bar stool misses your liquid courage. Environments store identity like flypaper traps. Walk through them, unprepared, and you'll leave pieces of your new self behind. The most dangerous illusion. Here's the cruelest trick your mind plays, convincing you that resurrecting the old self would be easier than birthing the new one. It's why we re-download. Dating apps after breakthroughs in solitude. Laugh at jokes that stopped being funny years ago. Wear old personas like comfort sweaters that no longer fit. Not because we want to go back, but because forward still feels like freefall. A realization cuts through the graveyard fog. Mourning isn't passive. It's demolition work. Every unread email. From your old life? A brick to remove. Every habit that no longer serves? A wall to tear down. Every relationship built on expired terms? A foundation to excavate. The funeral was just the first step. Now comes the real work, hauling away the rubble of who you were. The cemetery gates creak shut behind you. The mourners have all gone home. You stand alone in the twilight, the freshly turned earth at your back staring at your hands, still dirty from burying what you were. Now comes the dangerous question. What do you do with a life that no longer fits? The first act of war, stop digging up the corpse rebellion, begins with the simplest, most brutal discipline, Stop resurrecting dead versions of yourself for other people's comfort. When your mother asks why you're being different, let the question hang in the air like smoke. When colleagues demand your old hustle, show them your empty hands. When your ex texts the inside joke only your former self would understand, don't reply. This isn't cruelty. It's archaeological precision, brushing away the dust of expectations to reveal the artifact beneath. The counterintuitive weapon, strategic amnesia. Neurologically speaking, identity is just a story the brain tells itself. So burn the mental highlight reels of who you used to be. Let old achievements yellow like newspaper. They weren't the destination. Forget the grudges that gave your former self purpose, like Nietzsche's eternal return in reverse. Live each moment, as if you could never prove it happened. The daily revolution's true rebellion happens in micro-resistances, the closet purge. Donate the clothes that feel like costumes, that professional blazer. Kindling, those sexy heels. A trap, the digital guillotine delete apps that connect you to expired identities. LinkedIn for your old career path, gone. Dating profiles from your searching phase, erased. The name game. Try signing emails with just your initials. Let Starbucks baristas call you random names. Whisper your full name to yourself until it sounds foreign. The enemies of emergence. Expect these saboteurs, the nostalgia demon. Remember how happy you were when we counter with, I remember how small I was. The practicality police. But this isn't financially, logistically, socially smart. Ask, smart for whom? The person I'm burying. The identity vampires, people who only show up when you play old roles. Starve them. Here's the secret. No motivational guru will tell you. The more you destroy, the more alive you feel. That sinking sensation when you delete your old About Me bios, that's the water breaking for your new mind. The vertigo when you walk into a party no one expected you to attend. That's the ground reforming beneath your feet, the point of no return. You'll know the rebellion is working when you catch your reflection and pause, not from disgust but curiosity. Your dreams stop replaying old scenes and start inventing alien landscapes. The question, who am I, makes you grin instead of panic. The grave is dug. The body is buried. Now comes the terrifying part. Learning how to live without a corpse to carry. The grave is filled, the shovel abandoned. You expected catharsis, some divine light to baptize your new existence. Instead, there's just silence. And in that silence, the final revelation arrives. The corpse was never the problem. All this time, you thought you were burying an identity. But what actually lies in that coffin is far more profound. The illusion that you ever had one to begin with. The grand deception. Unmasked. Every spiritual tradition whispers this truth in different tongues. Zen Buddhism, no self to identify with. Taoism, the name that can be named is not the eternal name. Quantum physics, observer and observed are one. Even neuroscience confirms it. Your brain retroactively creates the fiction of a continuous you to make sense of chaos. The cosmic joke, the punchline? You weren't liberating yourself from an old identity. You were discovering you'd never been imprisoned by one. The you that agonized over this funeral? Already dust. The you reading these words. A temporary configuration of stardust and electricity. The you that will walk away from this screen, a story your mind will tell itself later. The alchemy of nothingness. This isn't nihilism. It's ultimate freedom. Your past selves weren't anchors. They were waves that already crashed. Your future self isn't a destination. It's a rumor you're whispering forward. Your present self isn't a thing to be. It's a verb pretending. To be a noun like a Russian nesting doll with nothing at the center, you're free to contain multitudes. The end of seeking all spiritual seeking contains a hidden arrogance. I am here, Enlightenment is there. But when the seeking stops, you weren't climbing a mountain to reach the summit. You were the mountain realizing it had never been separate from the sky. The ultimate responsibility, with this comes both terror and ecstasy. If there's no fixed self, every action is improvisation. If identity is fluid, every moment is a creation. If the ego is fiction, every limit was imagined. This is Sartre's radical freedom taken to its logical extreme. Not just that we're condemned to be free, but that we're inevitably free even when pretending otherwise. So here you stand, not reborn but discovered, not transformed but uncovered. The great irony? This funeral wasn't an ending. It was the first honest moment of your life, where you finally stopped confusing the map for the territory, the character for the actor, the costume for the flesh. The Zen masters say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But oh, what different wood, what different water. The ceremony is over. Now begins the unimaginable part. Living. As if you'd never been buried.